Greetings, everybody. So for those of you guys watching the replay of this, hello. This is just a live casual hangout. We're going to be answering some questions that come in with the chat room. Just rambling on a Saturday night. So greetings, everybody. I don't know what you guys are drinking tonight, but tonight we're drinking, once again, a Pelican Brewing Company. This is the Cian Red Irish style red ale. So it's one of my favorite drinks. So you guys in the chat room, let me know if you can hear and see me okay. It's always, there's always technical difficulties with these live streams. I'm going to close some windows so I don't have anything sucking up my bandwidth. How are you guys? Where is everybody from? Let me know in the chat room. It's a good beer. It's a good Saturday night beer. So I don't know how much you guys have been able to get out and shoot. Because I live in southeastern Washington, we're kind of entering what I refer to as the boring time of year, because typically the skies start getting really, really empty this time of year. And it's great for astrophotography, but I find that as I get older, astrophotography is not as much fun because I don't feel like staying out all night as much anymore. Hello, we got people from California, Toronto, Canada, Florida, Texas, Long Island, Klamath Falls, Michigan, Fort Bragg, Longview, Virginia. Holy cow. Got people from everywhere. So I haven't been getting out to shoot very much. And when I have gotten out to shoot, it hasn't been video worthy. I get pickier and pickier about what I choose to do a video about. I don't want to just try to make a video out of every single time I go out, because sometimes when I go out, it's just not that interesting. I want to try to create videos that actually have some kind of interesting story going on, and it's hard to do that every time I go out. But the next time I do go out, I do have a new toy to play with. So let me take the case off. This is a Rode Stereo Mic X, not a cheap microphone. I think I paid around $600 for this guy. But this is a stereo microphone, which is going to greatly help with the sense of ambience, in the video. I decided to kind of double down on the audio quality of my videos because, as you guys may have noticed, the ambience, the sense of place is getting more and more important to me in the videos that I do. I've actually made a couple where I barely talked at all, and I really enjoy making those kinds of videos. You have to have really interesting audio to create a video like that. So I'm kind of doubling down on the audio side of things with this microphone. I'm excited to use it, and yet I haven't got to yet. Also, on the video side of things, I invested in a new video tripod. You'll notice this when I get a tripod that's going to be for video, I typically am looking for the smallest, lightest thing I can get that will still stand decently tall. Because if you're recording yourself talking, you need to be almost at head height. That way it doesn't feel like the camera's looking up your nose, it doesn't, so it's not looking up to you. So this is a FLM tripod because I'm a FLM fan. This is a CP22. And what's cool about this, not only is it really small and light, it extends pretty tall. It has no center column because I hate center columns. And one of the interesting things that they've done is with this leg section here, you can unthread this part right here. Don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, but you can unthread this section here, right? And then the entire leg will unscrew. And it's not just one leg that'll do this. All three will do this. And one of the things that they've done to kind of target hikers and backpackers and people that want light tripods, typically are hikers, one of the things that they've done is that you can take this leg and actually screw on a hiking pole top and you can use these as hiking poles. Pretty clever. And they've also, when you buy the tripod, they include these little short legs, so you can take this and just thread it on, and then you've got like a little mini tripod too. Or you could do this and then screw this part on, and then you've got an even taller tripod. These are 3/8 thread, so you could even put it up on top like an extended center column kind of thing. It's interesting. It's the reason I got it is because it's incredibly light, yet it's still sturdy and gets tall enough. So this is the CP22 from FLM. That's going to be my new video tripod. So looking over at the chat room, looks like somebody just picked up a CP34. Amazing. Yeah. CP34 I feel is a really good size for just kind of a good general all-around tripod. It's big enough to be plenty sturdy for anything you're going to need, but not quite as big as the CP38, which is probably overkill for most applications. How much is it? I believe, I don't remember anymore. I want to say that this little video tripod was like $350 US, something like that. Drinking Malbec because you are posh. Malbec is good stuff though. Yeah, I'm a beer guy though. Good to see you, John. Let's see. What tripods do I find better, screw leg jointed or the ones with a clip? So you're talking about twist lock versus flip locks. I've always preferred twist lock. Because why do I prefer twist lock? I guess flip lock, I've found that the ones that I've seen and used, if they get gummed up like you shoot in salt water, they're much more difficult to take apart and clean. Twist locks are very easy to take apart and clean. That, and I don't know, that's probably the main reason. I've always just preferred twist locks. I've never really liked flip locks. It's just personal preference, honestly. Want an FLM tripods are good. Is that a Wacom tablet you see? Yes, it is. So this is my Intuos Medium Pro Wacom tablet. I've had it forever. You can probably see how polished, smooth it is in this section because I don't even have a mouse. I always use a Wacom tablet. I think it's getting time to probably replace it. It still works good. I've had it for probably 4 years or something like that. But it's starting to, I don't know. It still works fine. It's just like, I don't know. It's got like some creaks and stuff going on. Let's see. Have I photographed the comet yet? I have not made it out to photograph the comet. To do it in my area, I think last night I would have had to have been out at about 4:15 a.m. I don't want to get up at 4:15. That, and I've seen so many photos of it, and so many people have gone out to shoot it. I just don't know what I would do that would be any different. I feel like I would just go out and do the same thing that everybody else is doing. Most of the photos, for those of you guys that don't know what we're talking about, right now there is a comet that you can see in the sky. It's happening obviously at night. And it's visible for what, like 15 minutes, maybe a half hour at a time. And it's cool because it's been visible like every night for a week or something, or it's projected to be visible every night for a week. Most of the photos that I've seen, I've seen some pretty good ones where people have zoomed into like 150 millimeters and done a pretty good job of filling the frame with a foreground elements, whether it's a tree or a windmill, and then have the comet in the background. I think I just don't know what I would do any different. Honestly, it would be kind of interesting to shoot 70-200 or to take my 300-2.8 and like zoom way in. The challenge is going to be that the longer focal lengths, you're going to need a shorter shutter speed to make sure stuff's not blurry. And with shorter shutter speed means you're jacking up the ISO, and it's interesting to try to get something in the frame to give it a sense of place. But that's the reason I haven't went out and shot it, is I don't know what I would do any different. Christopher, thank you so much. Christopher just sent me $20 and said beer money. So that is very kind of you. Thank you very much. Have I ever dabbled in binaural what recordings for videos? Well, I guess that answers my question, since I don't even know what that is. I guess I haven't. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Next week it'll be visible in the evening after sunset and will increase from the horizon. It'll be closest to Earth on the 23rd of July. So closest to Earth is a good thing. That means it'll be a little bit brighter and it'll take up more of the sky. I shot it at 480 meters with a telescope. Did that fill the frame at that focal length? I would be curious to know. Yeah, I could always shoot the common to Mesa Arch. That would be good. Let's see. Have I ever done any drone work? I love the Mavic Air 2 with the 48 megapixel capabilities. So yeah, I do a little bit of drone work. I don't have my commercial license, so I don't do very much of it. But I do a little bit. I have two drones. I have my Mavic Air, and then I have my Phantom 4 Pro with the Obsidian. You know, it's like black and cool looking. And I got that with the intentions of doing a lot more photography with it. One of the cool things about the Mavic Air 2 is the fact that you can stitch images together and create a 48 megapixel frame. Or is it stitching? I think it's combining. That way you get a lower noise. Or maybe that's just with the JPEG. I don't know. And regardless, it'll spit out 48 megapixel files. Yeah, the problem, and I've said this a lot of times before, the problem with drone stuff is that everywhere that's really cool and you'd really like to fly your drone, you can't, because there's no drone signs. I feel like drones are illegal everywhere that you'd really want to fly them. And every single time I take my drone out to fly, like if there's anyone around, I don't even want to do it because they always give me the evil eye, you know? People hate drones. And I'm guilty of it too. If I hear a drone and I'm like out hiking, I'm like, oh, stupid drone, you know? So I'm so self-conscious about flying it. I don't take my drones out very much at all anymore. Love my storm photography. You should try and do a collaboration with Picos. Yeah, you're not the first person to say that. I would love to reach out to him and do some work together. Where do I live? I live in southeastern Washington state, so pretty close to Oregon. And that's why I shoot so much in Oregon, is because Oregon is kind of more photogenic. And literally, I can drive 10 minutes south and be in Oregon. Oh my God, finally caught a live stream. Yes, you did, Kat. You've caught a live stream. Welcome. Chris Anderson, hey, Nick, any suggestions on a new camera? I'm thinking about an A7R III. Not sure if the A7R IV is worth the extra $700. So the A7 III versus A7R IV is kind of an interesting one, because the A7R IV is better in the hand, no doubt. It's got a better focusing system, no doubt. Dynamic range, about the same. High ISO performance, the A7R III is much better than the A7R IV. Maybe not much better, but it's definitely better. And the reason is because the A7R IV has so many more megapixels, it just doesn't do quite as good with those higher ISOs. So is it worth the extra $700? I don't know. I did it just so I could stay current, because the longer you hang on to a camera, the more it loses value. So my strategy for staying current is, as soon as the replacement for whatever camera I own comes out, I replace it with that newer one. That way I lose the least amount of money on my old camera. Because if I would have hung on to that A7R III until like the A7R V comes out, that camera's not going to be worth anything. But if I sell it pretty much immediately, I've lost a little bit less. So I think I sold my A7R III for like $1,700, something like that. And I only bought it for, I don't even remember what I bought it for. But if I would have held on to it for another year, that probably would have cost me another $500. Let's see. Have I been to Hanford to shoot? I found it was interesting. Yes, I have been to Hanford. The Hanford Reach area, which is well known because it was part of the Manhattan Project back in the day when, they were producing the plutonium. Is it plutonium? Uranium? One of those two. I think it's uranium. For the bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, that was actually created, about hour and a half to my west. And what's interesting is the nuclear reactors and stuff are still there. And just across the river, there's this really beautiful little area with sand dunes and stuff, which is kind of unique for Eastern Washington. You don't think of sand dunes in Washington State, but occasionally I go over there and shoot, and it's really photogenic. And then, there's all of those nuclear plants right across the river. It's very interesting. I have an A7 II, planning to keep it for a time-lapse rig. So yeah, there's two ways of dealing with like the devaluation of cameras. You can either hang on to it forever and just try to get your miles out of it. That way you get your money's worth. Or you can try to stay current and keep up with the Joneses. So, buy camera. As soon as a replacement is released, sell that camera and replace it with the new thing. And then it's, if a camera devalues $500 in 2 years, let's say you buy it for $2,500, sell it for $2,000 after you've had it for 2 years. It's like you rented that camera for 2 years for $500. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't know. That's how I justify it to myself when I feel like buying a camera. What lenses and accessories do I usually carry with me when I go on long hikes? 10 plus miles. So you are assuming that I ever go on 10 plus mile hikes. That's very rare. I've only been on a couple of those. As far as accessories I take less and less camera gear so to make room for all the other stuff, aka food and water. Let me take a drink of my beer. So on a long hike, I try to really plan ahead what lenses I absolutely need. So a lot of times I can get away with my wide angle lens and like my 24-105, because that telephoto lens starts looking really heavy when you're thinking that you're going to have to hike a long ways. And, that telephoto lens, that could be a bottle of water, which, might be a little bit more enjoyable in the long run. So a lot of times I take far less camera gear, and so I can pack all the other stuff because I don't like long hikes. R5 AA filter. My thoughts on detail and sharpness. I haven't, that's one of the things that I haven't heard is whether it does have an AA filter. I haven't heard that it does not. And from what I understand, Canon puts AA filters on all of their camera bodies, except for the Canon 5DSR. That was the only one that didn't have an AA filter, and that's why it was so high resolution. So I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys know this, but I'm pretty sure that the R5 will have that AA filter, which means that the higher megapixel count of that camera isn't going to be fully realized like, Sony A7R IV, because, you do lose quite a bit of sharpness with that AA filter. So it's an interesting point. I would be very interested. Yeah, it does have an AA filter. Big mistake in my opinion. Yeah, I think, but you got to keep in mind that R5 is like a very video centric camera. So in video, that AA filter is pretty important because, for example, I have an A9, A7R4. I don't know which camera is which anymore. And when I record video with my A7R4, the aliasing is pretty strong. I notice it like on everything. So if you have a video centric camera, you kind of have to put an AA filter on it. I think that at some point they will come out with like what would they even call it? R5R, the high resolution R5. And that one will probably not have an AA filter, and it'll probably have a much higher megapixel count. That will probably be the landscape photographer's camera body. Okay, we have a super chat. Let's go up to our super chat here. Bill asks, monopods, do I ever use one, and under what circumstances and what model? So my monopod that I do take with me sometimes, the only time I ever really take a monopod is when I'm doing sports photography or photographing birds in flight. The reason I take a monopod is because a lot of times I want to have my camera, right there and ready for a long period of time. And a tripod is too cumbersome because I don't have a big fancy, gimbal on my tripod. But what I do have is I have my monopod, and then I've got this tiny little gimbal that's made by Wimberley, which is a very simple thing. And it allows me to have stuff ready, but not have it like up here where your arms get tired after a while. My monopod is just made by Enduro. It's like an Enduro stealth, big carbon fiber thing. I think I paid like $250 or something like that. Enduro is really nice for making good stuff at a fairly reasonable price. Let's see. It's really hard to keep up with all the questions here. Let me see if I can pop this out, put it over here. So I'm just rearranging my window so I can actually see some questions here. The Shimoda bags on the F4 trip, what did I think of them? They look good, but a little heavy maybe. So my Shimoda bag, I have the 50 liter. Both Tom and Adam, they have the 70 liter, which are just way too big in my opinion. The 70 liter, I don't know why anybody would need a bag that large unless you're backpacking with it. The 50 liter though, I don't feel is too heavy or too big because you can kind of, you can roll that top down to where it's not, if when it's empty, it's not heavy, obviously, because it's empty. But, it's as big as it needs to be or as small as it needs to be. So I love my Shimoda bag. It's my go-to bag. I've tried other bags and I can't switch away from the Shimoda bags just because the Shimoda bags, in my opinion, are so much more comfortable. There's just something about the big wide straps and the way it fits your back. It's just way more comfortable than other bags. Let's see here. John says, bought my 5D Mark IV for $3,300. It's $2,700 now. Not much point in selling it. Yes, the R5 has AA filter, but they claim it can help sharpness. AA filter are good for portraits and fabric. Yeah. So typically, AA filters don't help sharpness. They typically diminish sharpness while trying to get rid of, aliasing or trying to get rid of moire patterns. You see it a lot in portraits and especially in video. That's when you really notice it. When you have, it's just something as simple as like the texture in my hat up here. If this camera didn't have an AA filter, which my video camera does, you'll see all these crazy lines, and it's just really, really strange. Limp Bizkit, yay or nay? Oh, I need a drink for this. So what I got to say about Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit, I actually loved the drummer. I think it was John Otto was the drummer. That's about all I can say about Limp Bizkit. They had an awesome drummer, but man, I hate Fred Durst. But it is so stereotypically 90s, or maybe as early 2000s. They were the shiznit there for a while, but awesome drummer, terrible band. Let's see. Shimoda Action X is a very nice product. Shooting with 5D Mark IV. What's a good lens to start with? That's a loaded question because it depends on what you shoot. You can't, it's hard to discount how versatile and useful a 24-105 lens is. So 24-105 is a great starting point. 24-70 is also a good lens. It depends on what you shoot. Let's see. How come I don't use a light and switch when I shoot lightning or light? Okay. Why don't I shoot? One more drink. This is why nobody drinks on YouTube, because you stumble on your words, and I'm already bad at that. Lightning triggers. Why don't I use them? So I have a lightning trigger. I have the lightning trigger. I think I have the Mark III version. The reason I don't use them, use them when I go out to shoot lightning is because a lot of times when I'm using them, I end up missing more lightning bolts than I catch. A lot of times it's just hard to have them be at the perfect sensitivity to where sees a lightning bolt, it shoots. A lot of times, like it'll shoot when there is no lightning bolt, or there'll be a big lightning bolt and then it didn't go off. And it only takes a few of those before you're like, screw it. And you take it off and then you just go back to the old fashioned way. I've had enough of those experiences to where I just set up a time lapse. I try to make my interval as short as possible. And then I just crank through it. Night lightning, you definitely don't need a lightning trigger because your shutter speed is so slow that the likelihood is very high of catching a lightning bolt. Daytime lightning, that's the one time when a lightning trigger really helps, because you're always struggling to lengthen your shutter speed. And if you have to put on an ND filter to lengthen that shutter speed to increase the odds of catching that bolt, when you finally do catch a bolt, it's often so faint because of that ND filter that's kind of, anticlimactic. You caught a lightning bolt, but it's just a faint little line on your thing, on your photo. So you have to balance, like, okay, I'll use a little bit of ND. A 3-stop ND is as much of an ND filter as I'll ever use when photographing lightning, but no ND filter is a better way to go, because your lightning is still going to have a lot of impact. So for that reason, I wish that I could make a lightning trigger work for me, because the photos will be better with them. I just have very little success with them. Okay, Deftones. Deftones is good. Yeah, another drummer that I really like. But you gotta be in the mood. Like I'm not very often in the really whiny metal mood. And the Deftones is a little bit that way. I don't like whiny metal. I like man metal. Let's see. What's a good camera for beginners? Oh, that's a loaded question again. A lot of times I'm referring people to check out Sony a6400. It's a really affordable camera. When you're first getting started, you just need something that is interchangeable lensed. Man, I'm making words up already. That has interchangeable lenses, but is affordable enough to get into and to be able to enjoy yourself, take good photos. The other thing you got to consider is when you're buying that first camera, you're buying into a camera system, because you're going to acquire a bunch of lenses most likely. And then you want the next camera body is probably going to be the same brand. So you want to make sure that you're buying into a camera system that has a decent future. I think Sony is a safe bet. It's looking like Canon's a safe bet again. I would go Canon or Sony right now, obviously. Hagar or Roth? Oh, can I say neither? I feel like Van Halen should have wrote more instrumental songs, because I hate both their singers. Lightning Trigger 4 is better. So I'm curious about that. But the problem with the lightning triggers is each one of them is like $399 or $350 or whatever they are. And I already own one and it doesn't work. I'm worried that I'll buy another one and it still won't work. And then the other thing about buying something just for lightning strikes is the fact that it happens 3 times a year for me, or 4 times a year. So I'm spending $400 on that couple times a year that I'll even get to use the thing. Did I add some whiskey to that beer? No, that I probably should. I've only had this much. This is my first beer of the day. I need to get to drinking. Rampage 7070 sent me $20. Thank you for the inspiration on Photoshop. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you to send me $20. Hendrix. That's something I can get on. Can you buy case filters separately? That's a good question. I assume that you can buy them individually. You might not be able to do it through B&H or Amazon. You might have to do it through the case website. That's a good Cardi B or Death. I'm going to go with Death. even though I don't really like death. Who likes death? Where do I sell my used gear? I'm lucky in the way that I can sell most of my gear through Instagram, but you know, it kind of helps to have like 100,000 people follow you on Instagram. I can literally just share on my story, hey, I have this for sale, and then somebody wants to buy it, and then it works out. Before that, I always sold stuff on eBay. How's the Pluto trigger? I had a Pluto trigger, never used it. Because I tried to use it for lightning and it sucked. It didn't work at all for lightning. So it went back in the box, never used it again. Nick Page or Nick Page? I'm going to go with Nick Page. What kind of beer am I drinking? I am drinking Pelican Brewing Company. This is out of Pacific City, Oregon. And this is an Irish-style red ale. They call it Seein' Red. Let's see. Wolverine case filters are sold as a set or separately. Yeah, I would think that they would be able to, that they sell them separately. I know I bought several lens caps or extra lens caps. Have I ever seen the Numia drum cam from Danny Carey? Yes, that is awesome. So Numia, is that how you say that? One of the new Tool songs. So Danny Carey from Tool is like, he's probably my number one drummer. He's my favorite drummer. Where did I get my hat? It's an Amazon special. I don't have any here with me, but I've got several of these hats that just kind of are generic with like a little tree and a mountain. I found them on Amazon. They're pretty sweet. You use the lightning bug and it works for you. So that's interesting, Jim. I've never actually heard of the lightning bug triggers, but I would be interested in it if it works. Did I pick a winner for the filter giveaway yet? No, I have not. I don't know what my next video is going to be, but I'm going to announce the winners of the filter giveaway basically in my next official video. Tried selling on eBay, only got scammers, cannot recommend. Ooh. I've never really experienced too many. Well, I've gotten a few scammers where they're like, hey, I'd like to buy this, but can you take it down and then I'll send you a PayPal or whatever. I just always ignore that crap. Where am I broadcasting from? Do I have a home studio? So yeah, this is literally just the extra bedroom in my house. So my house is a 3-bedroom. This is actually the master bedroom. When we moved in, I took control over the master bedroom. I was like, that's my office. And because it was so echoey, I put all of this black sound dampening foam on, basically, not really on the walls, but basically on the walls to help with all of that. It's literally just an empty bedroom. Do I rely on selling prints for income? How have they done for me? So when I first was getting started with the whole photography career thing, I was selling a lot more prints than I am now. Because, you know, I thought that would work. And with my landscape photography, that was probably before I started teaching, you know, the educational side of things. It was making me a bit of money, but now I don't sell very many prints at all because I don't have a good fulfillment setup to where I can both do quality control, but it doesn't take me just tons of time to do. I would really like to have some kind of setup to where people can just order off my website and it arrives to them and I don't have to worry about the quality control aspect. For a while, I was doing stuff like that through, I think it was Zenfolio way back in the day. And the quality just wasn't there. And people were ordering weird stuff. I think they were ordering like coffee mugs with one of my prints on them, like really cheesy crap that I don't want associated with my photography. So what I would like to do and what I've told myself I was going to do is get set up better with some kind of fulfillment system where it'll be quality prints, but it can be done all automatically through my website without me having to go in and manually do stuff and go find a file and then send that to the print lab and all the back and forth. I find that the profit margin on a lot of my prints is so low that it doesn't, I don't know. I don't feel like I come out money ahead by the end of the whole experience because it's taken so much of my time. Thank you, Mark. I just got $20 for a beer fund, so I should be sitting good for beer for a while. That's very nice. Let's see, R5 or R6 for portraits and landscapes, no video. That's an interesting one. So the R6 is going to have much better high ISO performance, but I'm guessing the R5, well, obviously the R5 is going to have more resolution and probably better dynamic range. I'm guessing it's hard to tell. As a landscape photographer, you got to say that the higher resolution camera is going to be better for printing, obviously. But the R6 is it's going to be a better price, and it's going to have better high ISO performance. So it kind of depends on how much you print in the end. If you print a lot, I think the R5 is going to be a good camera. East Coast Tour. If I stop by Virginia, you'll buy the beer. I would love, man, there's a lot of, like, I've never seen the Smoky Mountains. I've never seen an East Coast during fall color. There's a lot of things I would like to see on the East Coast. Maybe this is a year. It depends on whether the zombie apocalypse is over by then. Do I teach student? Yeah, so I do. I do teaching in like workshops and then through my tutorials. I used to offer like Skype one-on-one sessions. I guess that would be Zoom one-on-one sessions now. But I just kind of ran out of time doing that. So most of what I do is in-person education during my workshops and then my tutorial videos. Thank you very much, Justin. Awesome. Man, the money is just flowing in. Thank you guys. That was unexpected. Any thoughts about Vinnie Paul and Pantera in general? So I loved Pantera. I was a huge Pantera fan. I was a Damage Plan fan as well. So we're talking bands now again, metal bands. So after Pantera, both Vinnie and Dimebag, they started Damage Plan, and I loved Damage Plan as well. Vinnie is maybe not my favorite metal drummer, but he was right up there. I was probably a bigger Dimebag Darrell fan than I was a Vinnie Paul fan. Would the F4 group consider having a gallery or book for prints? That's a good idea. I think it would be very interesting to do some kind of like gallery showing that like moves around, and we do like an opening night together or whatever. I think the book thing probably wouldn't happen because both Tom and Adam have books already. So maybe a gallery showing could work. Do I print a lot? Why not the R4? If not, why the R4? That's a fair question, Ron. The main reason I got the R4 I had the R3 is I always shoot with the intention of printing stuff large. And someday I plan on going through my portfolio and printing more than I do now, or to start some kind of gallery. For me, the intention is always to print more. Whether I actually get around to doing it or not, that's another thing. But I always shoot with like that big wall hanger in mind. You know, the one that is giant when somebody walks in somebody's house. That the big one on the wall that's 6 foot wide. That's always what I'm shooting for in my head. I haven't got to do it very much though. But the main reason I shoot an R4 is because someday I'm going to. Have I listened to Tech 9? He's got some heavies. Actually, okay. So if we're going to talk rap, Tech 9, Eminem, those are probably my two favorite rappers. I don't listen to much rap. I mean, I probably don't look like I listen to any rap, but Tech 9 is rap that I can listen to because that dude is talented. Like when it comes to rhythm, Tech 9 is like the best when it comes to just rhythmical rapping. I have great respect for Tech 9. Morning, Nick. It's early here in the UK, shooting some Comet and ISS passing over. Awesome. Sounds like you must have some rare clear skies over in the UK, so that's cool. Do I have anything against the Nikon system? I know that company isn't doing great as a company. I'm talking photography-wise. No, I think the Nikon has some of the best sensors out there. I think that their mirrorless offerings aren't up to whatever other companies are doing yet. But once they get the mirrorless thing figured out, I think that Nikon will probably have the best system eventually. What I've never liked about Nikon personally is just I hate their menu system and their button layout. Like I just hate the layout of the camera, but image quality wise, like I think Nikon is excellent. I don't think their autofocus is quite there yet with Sony or Canon yet, but their sensors are excellent. So thank you, Jay Blake. Love the tutorials. When is the next round of workshops to be announced? So as you guys can imagine, it looks for my 2020 calendar, it looks like a bomb went off on my workshop planning calendar. It's a mess. Every single thing that I had planned for this year has had to be rescheduled for next year. So coming up soon, like I've been putting it off as long as I can just to see like what all I have to cancel and what 2021 is even going to look like. So everything that I was going to do this year essentially got pushed off to next year, which means that if I want to make any new money, I'm going to have to like squeeze some stuff in between all of those workshops. So next year is going to be very busy. Hopefully it's going to be very busy and I don't have to just like reschedule everything for another year. I don't think any of us could take another year of this crap. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know when I'm going to release next year's workshops. I want to see what is going on next year, you know? So Greenland, it's going like we're talking about it. It's the next thing on the chopping block, and it's looking more and more like we're going to have to cancel this year's Greenland workshop, or not cancel it, but reschedule it for next year. And so this year we only had planned on doing one. I think next year we're going to plan on doing two and have them go back to back. Thank you, John. I will have a Malbec on you. Is that how you say it? Malbec? Malbec. I know it's wine. I'll have wine on you. Thank you, sir. Where's my dream location to shoot that I have not visited yet? Norway, definitely one. Greenland, definitely one. Svalbard, that's a hard one to say. Svalbard, that's another one. I really want to photograph really rugged Arctic locations. I absolutely love Arctic locations because I don't know. It's probably the Viking in me. I just gravitate more towards cold climate type locations. So I think those are definitely some of what I'm most interested in. Thank you, One Adventures. Thank you very much. Have I used the TK panel for Photoshop? Yes. So I've used TK Actions pretty much since I started Luminosity Mass. I still continue to update TK Actions, but I use it less and less because for the most part, I prefer Lumenzia, just because the layout of Lumenzia is a little bit quicker and more streamlined looking. It takes up less space on my screen. And TK Actions is different every time it comes out, so you kind of have to relearn it, and it just slows me down a little bit. But I keep it installed because I want to be current on what's going on with Luminosity Mask panels. TK Actions is incredibly powerful, but you have to be able to utilize more than just the Luminosity Mask part of it for it to be worth all of the space that it takes up generally. Yes, Keith says I need to go to the Lofoten Islands in Norway. I agree. Although I feel like the Lofoten Islands is the most photographed part of Norway, and the rebellious part of me wants to photograph anything other than what is super popular. And if I see another, like it's like the same 5 places in Lofoten that everybody photographs. So I want to photograph something slightly different because there has to be so much other cool stuff there. But you always see like the same 5 compositions from Lofoten. Do I want to go to New Zealand? Yes, very much want to go to New Zealand. That's another thing that another place is very much on my list. And kind of back to the same thing. The one thing I'm not going to photograph when I go to New Zealand is that damn, what is the tree? What's the name of the tree? The Wonka? Is it the Wonka tree? Whatever. I'm not going to photograph that damn tree. I'm going to photograph everything other than that tree. Let's take a drink. What is my golf handicap? Right now it's a 4. Although today I played like it was a 18. Played awful today, but I'm a 4 handicap. Bed is calling. Well, good night. Thank you for hanging out. Different time zones are difficult. Do I have a dog like Primal Outdoors? Nope, I have no dog. Because as often as I travel and as much as I'm gone, I feel like I would be a pretty poor dog owner. And I've had dogs in the past, kind of ready to not have a dog. Let's see. What are my thoughts on F4 Season 2, but East Coast? So I think if we do a Season 2, it's going to be bigger and grander than what we did this time. So we've talked about all kinds of things. So we're talking about like a continent. So we've been envisioning like Africa or, New Zealand. We want to do something big and grand. Wonka. It's the Wonka tree. We want to do something big and grand if we're going to do it. I don't know if there will be a Season 2. There was so much kickback about the price that it kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit. So I think the best way to make a Season 2 happen would be to have it be funded by like a streaming service of some kind, like, a Netflix or an Amazon or whatever. That way, that's where the money's coming from, and then it's free to everybody else. Let's see. Quick question. How long have I been doing photography? Just an FYI, you're my absolute favorite photographer and love your content. Well, first of all, thank you. That's a mighty large compliment. So I got my very first camera in the early part of 2013. So I've been doing photography for 7 years. Is that right? What year is it? Yeah, 7 years. Which means I was 33 years old when I got my first camera. I had never done photography before that. And when I first started learning photography, I literally just started watching every single YouTube video about photography. So I watched all the same stuff that a lot of you guys probably watch. I watched all of the Tony Northrup videos and all the Frodo's photo videos. I watched all the same things. Once I outgrew what I could find for free on YouTube, I started buying tutorials. And I've pretty much bought every single tutorial ever made. Some people spend money on, going to the movies or lots of other things. I've always spent my money on tutorials. I've subscribed to all the lynda.coms and Kelby ones and all of that stuff. And I've soaked it all in. And that was, in my opinion, what aided to my growth as fast as that happened. I was incredibly, persistent would be one way, or obsessive would be another way to put it. I'm a very obsessive person, so I just consumed that stuff at an incredible rate, and I practiced and I shot a lot. And, it was only a year after I got my first camera to where I was making so much on my weekends from like portrait photography and weddings and real estate that I ended up quitting my day job because I could make more on that weekend than I could during my week at this dead end job that, I was miserable at. So yeah, I was just very, very obsessive. And that was really what, that was what got me to where I am, is I'm incredibly obsessive. F4 road trip was 100% worth it. Thank you very much. F4 was well worth the money. Thank you. COVID-19 made a dent in the F4 sales for sure. You are not wrong. I think you couldn't have picked a worse time for us to release it, but we had our choice of waiting and releasing it later in the year when who knows what would happen. When we're looking at the way things are, and is back in March, who knows whether people are going to have any money at all come October, which was kind of when we were originally going to release it. So we were like, well, maybe we should just release it now. So everybody's home. They need something to watch. And maybe they still have money now. Later on down the road, they might not have any money because who knows how long all this is going to go on for. Let's see. Creative Live. Yep. I've watched a ton of Creative Live. I need to put upstate New York on my trip agenda. Yeah, I hear it's gorgeous. Never been. Best $2.99 I've spent this year was on F4. Thank you very much. Is there still a discount on my Photoshop package? Right now, I have no discounts going on. And the reason I have no discounts going on is because I'm going to be a part of the 5-day deal. So my Essential Photoshop for landscape photography is going to be a part of that 5-day deal bundle that, people talk about every year. And one of the things about including your product in their thing is you can't put your stuff on sale right before the 5-day deal. Nick, do you ever find it hard to pay for tutorials when you're sure you can learn as well on your own? No. A lot of times I buy tutorials knowing that I probably know more than the person making them. I still buy tutorials, and I'm always just if I'm being honest, I'm always after the feeling of improving. When I was seeing lots of growth in my photography 3 years ago, when, I felt like I was getting better and getting better fast, that was the most fun I've ever had with photography. As my level of improvement has slowed down and started to plateau, so is my enjoyment. My enjoyment with photography is very much attached to just seeing growth. It's not about the destination. It's definitely about the journey. The journey is where the enjoyment comes from. And I love doing photography, but more than loving doing photography, I love getting better at stuff. I love seeing that improvement and feeling, accomplished and giving myself those pats on the back. And so when I purchase tutorials, in my mind, that's what I'm trying to purchase, honestly, is I'm trying to purchase that feeling of improvement and that feeling of I'm getting better at something and someday I'm going to be good. And so I never have a problem shelling out money because a lot of times I'm buying them from artists that I really respect anyways. And so it's win-win in my opinion. I'm potentially making myself better and I'm supporting this artist that I really like. That's the way I look at it. Holy cow, Layla. So Layla just gave me a $50 tip. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you. Thank you. Well, thank you. That is incredibly kind. I don't know how to respond to such kindness. Thank you guys so much. Andrew Block, really awesome. It's it's just how it is. Thank you for releasing F4 when I did. I just moved from Oregon to Hong Kong. That's quite the move. And the tutorials have been much needed while stuck in my hotel room for 14 days. I can only imagine, Sean, that's tough. Quarantining for 14 days in a hotel room, you're going to need more than F4 to get you through that. Hopefully that kept you busy for a couple days. Can't wait for F4 Season Road True. Do I follow Alistair Ben? Adam Gibbs' long lost twin brother. Yes. So yeah, I've actually had Alistair on my podcast, and then he had me on one of his videos. Alistair is somebody that I just discovered this year, but I love his photography, and more than even his photography, I love his outlook on things. He's got such good perspective, and he's so good at verbalizing some of the hard to verbalize parts of photography, talking about the why instead of the how. He gets into the philosophy of being an artist a lot, and I really appreciate that because that's a part of photography I really struggle with communicating. Who is my favorite YouTube photographer besides myself? As if I was going to say myself. Favorite YouTube photographer besides myself? I would say Michael Shainbloom. Michael Shainbloom's always been one of my photographic heroes. He is so good, so talented. I would say, Michael Shane Bloom. It's probably not even close. Michael Shane Bloom. Will I or have I shared my workflow? Yeah, my workflow is actually not super complicated. I share it like in all my post-processing tutorials, obviously, but my typical workflow, I start in Lightroom. I open things up if I can as a smart object inside of Photoshop. And then typically I will dual process a single raw file if I have the full dynamic range in that one frame. So if I have the full dynamic range in one file, I will process that smart object once for the sky, and then I will create a new smart object via copy. I'll create another smart object where this version will be for kind of the shadow information. So I'm going to decrease contrast, maybe a cooler color temperature for those deeper, darker shadows. And then I'll create another smart object from that same raw file where it's a little brighter, a little warmer, and then I'll work that into some of the highlights that are happening in that foreground so I can increase the depth and dimension. Because, you want your shadows to be kind of flat and low contrast, but you want the highlights that are happening in that foreground to really stand out and to draw attention. And then by just painting those in using like a luminosity mask as a guide, you can really increase the dimension, but you're in full control over where that dimension happens, where those highlights happen, and where the eye goes. Then I typically do stuff like Orton effect, dodging and burning, and sharpen it for the web. Bada bing, bada boom. Alistair is amazing. I agree. You could do a season 2 as a Kickstarter. Could. We caught so much flack that it was a big buzzkill because we thought it was going to be received a hell of a lot more positively than it was. Or maybe we just thought our followings were a little bit more supportive than they were. And don't get us wrong. We sold quite a few copies, but just didn't expect all of the negativity. And it did put a big downer on everything. Let's see. Come to Acadia National Park in autumn. So I have been to Acadia National Park and it was autumn, but it was just before fall color. I found Acadia to be pretty hard to shoot. Granted, we had nothing for sky every night we were there, but it was pretty challenging. Also, I had a lobster while I was there and they just put the whole thing on a plate, with some butter on it and handed it to you. It was the most disturbing thing I've ever tried to eat. There's something about having to break the carcass apart that is just so hardcore. I'm pretty sure I would be a vegetarian if I had to eat that stuff all the time. I couldn't do it. Brazzers are reality kings. Milestone, naughty boy. Michael Shane Bloom is line 1. He's certainly very talented. Yes. Actually bought Luminar 4, could not stand the subscription anymore. Yeah, there's a lot of people that take are really hard on the whole Adobe subscription model. Here's what I have to say about it. Most people spend more on lattes in a week than they spend on their post-processing for the month. 2 lattes, 2, venti lattes from Starbucks costs more than the most powerful post-processing software you can get. To me, it's a no-brainer, but it's because I'm so nerdy and hardcore about photography that $10 a month is nothing for me. I will gladly pay that. And Photoshop blows away Luminar and it blows away Skylum and it blows away Capture One. I've tried, I get asked enough, what do you think of Capture One? Or what do you think about this? And so I try those and they're just, it's like processing with your hands tied, in my opinion. Because Photoshop is so much more powerful. So I have zero issue paying the $10 a month. I need to get a drink. I know I'm nursing this beer. It's supposed to have, I guess that's why we call it have a beer, because I'm still halfway, but it's because I'm talking so damn much. I have to disassemble a lobster to eat it. Yeah, dude, it's hardcore, man. Like, I would much rather it come disassembled, because it's just, I mean, nobody hands you a cow and you have to just like rip a leg off, and like, there's something very primal about having to rip apart a carcass to eat it. The F4 haters should be ashamed of their bashing. You four have given so much away for free. And that's the way I thought of it, you know, like, I feel like all of us, but so many people would say things like, I feel like you owe us for our years of loyalty for this to be free or to be more affordable. And the thing is, like, we're the ones like going out and making the videos and editing the videos and then giving them out. But I think a lot of people, when they envision a YouTuber with however many subscribers, I think I'm at 116,000. They envision someone like me just being like this super rich dude that makes a ton of money off YouTube. And that's not how it works. Like a super good month for me, I make probably $750 from YouTube. And it's nice. Like, it's definitely better than a slap in the face, but it doesn't pay the bills. It's not like this is a full-time job for any of us. It's just interesting. Where's my Viking? Right, where is my Viking? Let's see. The beer has to be warm. Yes, I know. Yeah, but I can't get a new one because like new one's all the way in the other room and I can't just like walk away. How do I find my excellent weather conditions? So I'm a weather nerd. It's hard to chug beer and then talk right afterwards. I follow weather apps pretty closely. So, you know, I've talked about it before. I use WeatherBug. I use Storm. Those are kind of the two main ones that I use to like determine, you know, what the weather's going to be like at this place. And then I just have a whole bunch of points all around the western half of the United States where I just kind of monitor like where stuff is happening that's interesting. And when I see that the weather might be volatile means interesting to me. So, for example, it was 2 weeks ago, I took off on this crazy long road trip on a whim. And in hindsight, I went way too far. But I went all the way down to like southeastern Colorado. I was almost to Kansas, which is a hell of a long drive from where I am. And I was just trying to meet up with storm cells. It's very often that like I'll be checking along the coast, especially in the wintertime. And if I see that there's going to be like 25, 30 foot swells, I just take off and I go. And I go to try to photograph those interesting conditions. So I spent a lot of time on weather apps, just kind of checking and monitoring what things are looking like in different places. Yeah. So $750 for all the work I put in, the hourly pay. It's not great. It's not great at all. And I'm sure there's YouTubers that, you know, they put out so many more videos that they make more per month, but it's not what people think. You know, I'm not buying my pickup because of YouTube. But having said that, the most valuable part of YouTube is the fact that you guys even know who the hell I am. You know, the name recognition part of it, that is the value of YouTube. The fact that anybody has even heard of Nick Page, I owe 100% to YouTube. Yeah. But I've always been somebody that considers myself a photographer first, a YouTuber like third or fourth. You know, I don't consider myself a YouTuber. I consider myself a photographer that makes some videos for YouTube. Thoughts on keeping the image original versus using Photoshop to remove distracting elements. I think that, is that a comment behind me? I think that everybody has their own lines on what they will do and what they won't do. For me, I have zero issue removing distractions if it's like little things like sticks and twigs and those kinds of things, or even like little areas of sky that are poking through the leaves in a forest scene. I'll clone stuff like that out, but I won't drop in a fake sky. I won't move a boulder that was over here to this particular composition because it looks good. I won't take a sky from this direction and drop it in this scene. I won't even, and I'm different in this way, I won't take a twilight image where I get to stop down to like F8 or F16 and then wait for 4 hours and then take a Milky Way image and then splice them together. Because to me, and I'm alone in this and I acknowledge that, to me, it's kind of cheating. You know, if the very fact that you were able to stop down to F16 means that that's not a night image, you know? So I'm weird. Everybody comes up with their own lines in the sand of what they deem as acceptable and what they deem as cheating. For me, the fun is in trying to get locations and weather conditions to line up together. And if I wasn't able to make those two things line up, I see it as a reason to go back. And it's like, you know, part of the chase. So I'm always very reluctant to do too much. But at the same time, I like to process the hell out of my images. So it's not like I'm true to life straight out of camera. But what I try to accomplish in post-processing is I try to get it back to how I experienced the scene or the location or the night. You know, maybe I experienced it with a little bit warmer highlights because I was so excited. You know, when you're excited, everything's a little warmer. And when you're sad, everything's a little colder. You know, I will play with the emotion and the color and stuff like that, but I don't just full on fake a scene. Let's see. Do I sell prints upon request? My channel and work have inspired me to get started in photography. I would love a Nick Page photo on the wall. Yeah, I'm always willing to sell prints. I'm just really slow about fulfilling them because I don't have a great setup for it, but I will do it. So yeah, send me an email and we'll make it happen. Dana, is it Dana or Dana? Dana. It's got to be Dana. Thank you, man. Or I guess Dana is one of those names that could be both. Thank you, Dana. It could be a guy or a girl. Nick shouldn't drink. Is it worth starting a YouTube channel about photography in 2020? I say yes, if you feel like you can do it in a different way. I think the most important thing when doing anything really, but YouTube especially, is to do it different. Don't do it the same as what it's been done. That's why Gavin Hardcastle is as popular as he is because what he does is so unique and so different. And that's why Thomas Heaton is because he was the first to do what he's doing. You know, so try to be the first of you. Don't try to just do things as they've been done before. What are my thoughts on Patreon? So I had a Patreon for a while. And I thought it would be this great idea to offer a bunch of extra stuff. And then I failed to deliver on what I had promised people. And then it just turned into this source of guilt for me. So I think there's a lot of people that can, offer some value. But I think that Patreon, if you're not planning on adding value, it's a little bit weird. So it's been a little bit weird for me because originally I was going to have like extra podcast episodes and like some post-processing tutorial stuff. And then I just never had the time to ever accomplish any of the things that I said I was going to do. And so now it's just a source of guilt for me. Bourbon with Nick. Yay. Yeah, I should be drinking bourbon. I would at least be feeling it because right now we're 3/4 of the way into a beer that is very warm and gross because I talk too much and I drink too little. Vertical panos when shooting low and wide to include more sky. Is that something I practice? Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely do that. A lot of times, one of the things that I like to do is if a composition feels out of balance because the sky is just awesome, but the foreground is really cool too. Sometimes if you get down too low, the foreground becomes downplayed because you're so low that you don't have a lot of midground. You don't have a lot of depth. So one of the things that I'll do to overcome that is I will kind of get up a little bit taller so I can tilt down more and really exaggerate that foreground, stretch out those lines or whatever it is. But when you do that, you end up with like very little sky in your frame. You end up with like a fifth of the frame being your sky. So I'll do that nice stretched out wide angle foreground, and then I'll just tilt up a little bit, and then I'll catch a comfortable amount of sky, and then I'll just blend at that horizon line, and I'll kind of warp things around to where it fits into like a 16:9 aspect ratio or something like that. It's 2020. We should not assume gender or we fall prey to cancel culture. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm terrible about, like, one of the things that I always say, and because I'm a person of the 90s, is I always say either dude or man after the end of every sentence. Like, right on, man. Like, it's one of those things that I say. I'm definitely a product of the 90s. Probably couldn't tell that. It's just one of those things. Do I know any Chinese? I used to. Like, when I went to China, I learned a few phrases. And I don't remember them. So I know very little Chinese, if I know any. How hard is it to learn video editing? My first two YouTube videos I shot, downloaded DaVinci, and I'm fairly techie, but it's definitely a learn. Yeah, so it's very much a learning curve because just dealing with timelines and stuff is so very different. There's a lot. The nice part of any of those is that just like anything, you can learn it on YouTube. So what I like to do when I was first learning Premiere Pro, which is what I use, is I would, every time I had a specific question, I would just look it up on YouTube, and there was almost always a video for it. So you can always learn the basics of any of the programs on YouTube. Have I seen the 12 to 24? Cha-ching on the price. Yeah, so Steve, I have a copy that's going to be here next week. So I reached out to Sony, and they're going to send me the 12 to 24 f2.8 G Master. It's not a lens that I plan on buying because I like, like I've been ranting in my filter reviews, I like small, quick filters. And anything with a big bulbous front element is going to require a big adapter ring and all of that. Filters this large. I don't want to deal with any of that. It would be really cool to have, 12 millimeters. And I know that bulbous front element lenses can accept lenses in the rear. But the problem is, I already have issues with sensor dust as it is with my Sony. If I have to, if I'm shooting a seascape, I'm like, oh no, I need a 3-stop instead of my circular polarizer. Am I really going to stand there in the water and take my lens off and then slide in a filter and then put my lens back on? I already deal with enough lens sensor dust as it is. That's just invitation to doing nothing but cloning out dust spots. So that's one of the biggest issues with rear mount filters, unless you have a Canon that actually shuts that shutter, which I think is pretty genius. Have I ever been to Patagonia? If not, do I have plans to come one day? It's definitely somewhere that I want to go. I think I would go in a different time of year than the fall. Well, the fall for you guys, so it'd be April. I definitely would like to go during a different time of year because it seems like everybody goes during the same time of year. And I hate that. I want to do something other than what everybody else does, but Patagonia, I can't resist those mountains. They're so beautiful. Let's see. What did I do for my full-time day job before getting into full-time photography? I was a golf course greenskeeper. So I mowed grass all day long, every day, pretty much. I know. How do I keep from getting in a slump? Honest answer, I don't keep from getting in a slump. I get in slumps just like everybody else. A lot of times my slumps are slumps in motivation and inspiration. I feel like I can go out and poop out a good image, but it's not going to be an image that I'm attached to. So the thing that I'm struggling with the most right now is just why do I do photography? I need a purpose. And I think Josh Cripps had a really good video about creating projects for yourself. And I think that that's something that I need to do to help with my inspiration and motivation, you know? I think having a really solid reason I'm doing photography to give my work a sense of purpose, I think is something that I really need. But before, when I was in a slump, one of the best things that you can do is to just allow yourself to take a break. Like a lot of times the slump is just feeling like you've plateaued and you're not getting any better for a while. And the best way to overcome that is to just not put pressure on yourself to like be pumping out a bunch of content when you're not really excited about what you're doing. You're better off to just take that time to learn, or maybe take all the pressure off yourself and not even try to do good photography. Try to do bad photography. Try to do something different. Try a different genre of photography. That's always in the past been a really good thing for me, is to shoot a completely different genre of photography, and it ends up being really refreshing and fun. Holy cow. Thank you so much. $20. If I do a supercharge, your desire inspiration for photography, print one of your images at 6 foot wide and it'll really drive you. I only print large stitched panoramas and it completely drives me. Yeah. Large prints, that is one of those things that nothing feels quite as good as seeing your image printed large and to have it come out good. Thank you. And thank you for the super chat. That is really kind of you. Victoria, also a super chat. Have a mead, Nick. Yummy. Thanks for all you do. I've learned a lot from you. Thank you, Victoria. Mead, that'll get you drunk in a hurry. There used to be a mead bar in my tiny little town, and holy cow, mead will knock you on your butt. Honey mead is not joking around stuff. It's pretty awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're going to take a couple more questions, and then I think it's time for a cold beer and chill out for the night. Let's see. Thank you, Nick, for all the great info. Still #1 on the YouTube. Thank you. That means a lot. Take a drink, Nick. Thanks for the reminder. How am I so good at modifying my vehicle on my own? So you can kind of tell by my blue collar appearance, I don't come from a very white collar fancy family, to put mildly. I come from white trash, essentially. So all of my family, they were all mechanics. They're all also like, underachievers, but they're all home mechanics. So I was the only person in my family that was not a mechanic. So I know how to do mechanics. I've just always hated it. I always kind of rebelled against it. I never wanted to be a mechanic. I hated mechanics. And then it turns out it's kind of handy when you're working on your own truck to know how to do all that stuff. So it's just one of those things that I know how to do. I guess I'm mechanically inclined, but I just typically don't like it. Grab another beer. Have I ever thought about tornado chasing? Yes, definitely thought about it. I made an attempt to go down and photograph a supercell this year, but I wasn't down there long enough to catch it. Let's see. A while back, you got a 150 to 600. You said you were going to do some more wildlife. What happened to that? So back in the day, I had I had reviewed the Sport Sigma 150 to 600, and I liked it, but I ended up buying the 150 to 600 Contemporary. I used that for a long time. That was definitely my outdoor sports and wildlife lens. When I switched systems, when I switched from Canon to Sony, I got rid of that and all of my other Canon lenses. I pretty much replaced that with my 100 to 400 G Master from Sony. I don't have 600 millimeters anymore, but I do have a really solid 400 millimeters. So I find that it focuses a lot better. Derek, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. Thank you for the inspiration and knowledge. You are very welcome. One person's trash is another person's treasure. It's very true. Any advice for shooting non-iconic locations? It's always a challenge. So that's definitely the challenge that I put on myself more these days, is to try to do decent photography in places that are not as obvious. So one of the, typically when I'm thinking non-iconic locations, I'm a lot of times thinking the smaller scenes. So a photo either has to be about the conditions, like the conditions are going to be something special, or you have to find those smaller scenes that are more about composition. So I'm either going into forest scenes and trying to do those kind of small kind of things like that, just a random nondescript forest hiking trail or something, and really paying attention to how light is falling. You'll be amazed what you can see when you just go in and you're just like open to seeing anything. That, or if you're photographing more like non-iconic locations, a lot of times amazing weather and interesting conditions, it can make any location pretty awesome. So obviously if you have like giant lenticular clouds up in the sky, it doesn't take much of a scene to tie that scene together. So that's probably a large part of why I enjoy photographing big crazy storms, is because all it takes to make a really cool photo is when you have those skies, or like a tree. It could be a tree and some grass in the foreground, and it's an amazing photo. You take that same shot and put a big empty blue sky up there, and it's lame. So conditions can really save stuff like that too. Let's see. Sigma Sport. Yeah, Sigma Sport does weigh a ton. That's why I got the Contemporary. If I were to buy one of my courses, which one would I recommend? Kind of depends on where you're at with post-processing. My favorite course is probably the Mastering, Dodging, and Burning, because it's my most recent. I think that dodging and burning is the most powerful thing you can learn. But if you're just getting started in Photoshop, Essential Photoshop for landscape photography is probably the one you want, because it just covers everything you need to know in Photoshop for landscape photography. How long did it take for me to get good at editing my photos? I would argue that I'm just now getting there. So it took me 7 years. I feel like I really saw massive improvement in Photoshop anyways, probably about 3 years in. First year was all Lightroom. Second year, I was starting to dabble in Photoshop. Third year, I made a solid effort at trying to get better. So, from year 3 to year 5 were probably where I saw my biggest growth. What tripod do I recommend for landscape photography? I have a very thorough video about that. If you just do a search for Nick Page tripod review or tripod buying guide, that'll be way more in depth than I can give you here. But essentially, I love all FLM tripods. Those are probably the ones that I recommend the most. What is my age? Your opinion about veganism? So I am 40, just turned 40 in March. You can see from the gray beard. And veganism, like, I admire people that can do it. Is that a word? Veganism? About being a vegan? Anyway, I admire people that can do it. I wish I had the self-discipline to do it myself, but I don't. Let's see. Any suggestions for getting good quicker? Pour in your time. So many of us burn time watching television and, playing video games and doing tons of stuff where we're not using that time wisely. If you just take all of that time and pour it into practicing and watching a few tutorials, you'll be amazed at how quick you get better. So the biggest key is just to fully immerse yourself in what it is that you're trying to get better at, and you will, because there's nothing holding you back. Does Nick look like a vegan? No. I'm pretty sure I would be at least like 100 pounds lighter if I was. Layer masks are life-changing. Very sure. Very true. All right, guys. I think I'm spent. It's hard to talk for an hour and a half straight and keep it like coherent. Especially after drinking one whole beer. We did finish it. Oh, it's really warm and gross, but we finished it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you to all of the super chats. I was really, really not expecting all of that. Thank you guys so much for that. Yeah, really cool to be able to hang out with you guys. Happy weekend, everybody. And I hope that you guys are all safe. So take it easy, everybody. Good night.